Hey guys, we're going to talk about plot and the elements of it. So, plot is the sequence of events in a story. We can watch this video together, or you can view it on your own. Oops. Let's see if we can watch it. Here we go. So these are all the elements of plot. Looks like a mountain. Exposition is background information about the setting. It introduces the setting. It also introduces the characters. It can also provide background information. Then we have our inciting action or inciting incident. It puts the story in motion. What is sparking the story? The entire plot begins at this point. So, for example, like Nemo gets caught, that is what sparks the entire storyline. Let's see. Sorry about that. Until now, it had been background information. Now he has to try to save little Nemo. This is where the story really starts going. We have our rising action, events that lead up to a climax. So after the inciting incident of Mufasa's death, Simba grows up with Timon and Pumbaa. Or after the inciting incident of her move, Riley goes to school and hockey. Then we have our climax. This is the turning point in the story. This is like kind of like the biggest part. So it's when Simba returns home to find it completely destroyed. That's the climax of The Lion King. So in Up, it's when Carl finds Ellie's letter and decides to go help Russell. Notice the climax creates a change in the characters. And then we have our falling action. This happens right after the climax. It's the events that lead to the resolution of the story. So the resolution is when all loose ends are tied up. It's the calm after the storm.
assisting the elderly, and for performing above and beyond the call of duty. I would like to award you the highest honor I can bestow, the Ellie Badge. Next up, knowledge. My son, have fun. Oh, Mr. A, wait, I forgot something. Love you, Dad. I love you too, son.
Okay, so plot is the structure or organization of events in a story. It goes in sequential order. It has to go in order or the story is not going to make sense. Think of it as a roadmap to get you from point A to point B. It's basically what happens in the story. That is what plot is. What is it? So the plot structure is the beginning, middle, and the end of the story. It is made up of 5 main parts. One event is going to lead to another. So this is what the plot diagram looks like. You can we can look at and see what each section means. So if you click on that link, it will take you to a different slideshow. So identifying elements of a plot diagram, student notes. So let's see. So plot is the organized pattern or sequence of events that make up a story. Every plot is made up of a series of incidents that are related to one another, like a puzzle. The first part right here is our exposition. This usually occurs at the beginning of a story. It's where the characters are introduced. We also learn about the setting of the story. And most importantly, we are introduced to the main conflict or the main problem. We have our rising action. This part of the story begins to develop the conflicts. It is a building of interest or suspense occurs. We have our climax. That's the turning point of the story. It's usually the main character comes face to face with a conflict. The main character will change in some way. There's some sort of change in the character. And then our falling action is where all of our loose ends of the plot are tied up. The conflict and climax are taken care of. And then our resolution is where the story comes to a reasonable ending. Putting it all together, we have our exposition, which is the beginning of the story. The climax is somewhere in the middle. It could be near the end or even sometimes at the end of a story. And then we have our falling action, which is the end. So we have beginning, middle, and end. All right, we kind of went over exposition is the beginning. The character setting conflict are introduced. It helps give meaning to the actions that take place later in the story. Rising action, the events and problems leading to the climax. You have your problems and struggles. So during this part, obstacles occur and are standing in the way of the main character reaching their goal. We have our climax, so that's our turning point. It's a pivotal moment in the story that all the action builds up to. It typically is a very intense moment. And usually the main character is changed in some way by the events in the climax. We have our falling action. It's what happens after the main problem of the story, so the conflict unravels itself. There are direct effects of the climax. It ties up any loose ends that may be left in the story. It's supposed to satisfy the reader's desire to know what happens. We learn a great deal about the characters and theme in this part of the story. The story begins to slow down and work towards its end. And our resolution brings the reader to the end of the story. Everything is resolved and the story comes to a reasonable ending in most instances. So, why is it important? Without a plot, the characters would have nothing to do. It also engages the reader and keeps us interested in the story. All right, so that is your plot. So after you finish this video, you will go to Canvas and you will work on the La Luna activity. So if you clicked on Thursday, we just went over this together with this video, or you can do this on your own. And here is your La Luna activity. Remember, you are not going to submit this. You will click here. It will ask you to make a copy, save it into your 6th ELA folder, and then move it into your first 9 weeks folder. This is what it looks like. You can click here to watch the video, and you're going to fill in from the video what is the exposition, what was the rising action, what was the climax in the story, what was the turning point, where did you see a change in the character? And then, of course, your falling action, which is leading towards the end of the story. So it's kind of tying up all of those loose ends. And then what was the ending? And then we are going to go over this next week together. So again, you're not submitting this. You're just going to save it into your drive. And then next week we will pull it up and then we will go over it together.